Elon Musk stood confidently in the federal courthouse, his dark suit crisp against the wood-paneled walls, his eyes focused like laser beams. Just moments earlier, Judge Edward Chen had declared, "Mr. Musk's accusations are baseless and borderline contemptuous." The statement sent ripples through the packed courtroom, lawyers shuffling papers, nervously reporters leaning forward in their seats. But Musk, the tech billionaire, who revolutionized both electric vehicles and space travel, didn't flinch as millions watched the live stream. Judge Chen, with his Harvard degree and 20 years on the federal bench, was certain he had put the outspoken CEO in his place. But Musk, armed with a mysterious black folder and unwavering determination, was about to turn the courtroom into a battlefield. This wasn't just another tech hearing. It was Musk's moment to reveal what he'd been investigating for months and change the American judicial landscape forever. Before diving into this shocking story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our latest breaking coverage. The tension in courtroom 12B was thick enough to cut with a knife as Judge Edward Chen presided from his elevated bench. His black robes perfectly pressed his expression, stern and unwavering. At 68, Chen had built a reputation as one of the most respected federal judges in San Francisco, appointed by President Obama in 2011, rarely overturned on appeal, and known for his harsh stance against tech companies that played by their own rules. Across the room stood Elon Musk, the 52-year-old entrepreneur whose companies Tesla and SpaceX had disrupted entire industries for months. Musk had been battling a class action lawsuit before Judge Chen, a case that threatened not just billions in damages, but Tesla's entire reputation. "For those just joining us," whispered a CNN legal correspondent to her camera, Judge Chen has consistently ruled against Musk in preliminary motions, denied his request for dismissal 3 times, and just last week sanctioned his legal team for what Chen called obstructionist tactics. Many are saying Musk has finally met the one authority figure. He can't tweet his way around. The stakes couldn't be higher. Judge Chen had scheduled this hearing to consider the plaintiff's motion for summary judgment, a ruling that could potentially cost Tesla shareholders billions without even going to trial. Legal experts across the networks had been predicting disaster for Musk. Chen has him cornered, declared a MSNBC legal analyst that morning. But what nobody knew was that for the past 6 months, Musk had privately funded an investigation into Judge Chen's history and connections, in an investigation that uncovered documents nobody was ever supposed to find. Musk's chief counsel, Alex Spiro, sat beside him, uncharacteristically tense. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" he had whispered to Musk before proceedings began. "Once you go down this road, there's no coming back." Musk had simply nodded, patting the black leather folder on the table. Sometimes, he replied, the only way out is through in the gallery. The courtroom was filled with an unusual mix. Tesla shareholders, tech reporters, legal correspondents, and curiously, several high-profile political figures who rarely attended corporate litigation. Senator Josh Hawley sat in the back row, eyes fixed on his phone, but clearly listening to every word nearby. Congresswoman Katie Porter scribbled notes continuously. The plaintiff's lead attorney, Gregory Stevens, stood to address the court, confidence radiating from his $5,000 suit, "Your Honor, as we've demonstrated. In our filings, Mr. Musk's statements were not just misleading, they were deliberately fraudulent, and we have the evidence to prove it without needing a trial judge." Chen nodded approvingly, glancing at Musk with barely disguised contempt. "Mr. Musk, your response to this motion, though I must say, based on your previous arguments, I struggle to see what new perspective you could possibly offer." Several spectators smirked. A Reuters reporter typed, "Rapidly, Chen openly skeptical of Musk's position before defense even speaks." But as Musk rose to his feet, those who knew him best recognized a look they'd seen before. The same expression he had worn when announcing he would build reusable rockets, or when promising to create a million-mile battery. "When experts said it was impossible, Your Honor." Musk began, his voice steady, "before I respond to the plaintiff's motion, I believe there's a more fundamental issue that needs to be addressed, one that impacts not just this case, but the integrity of these proceedings." The room fell silent. Judge Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Musk, this is not the time for theatrics." Musk opened the black folder. "No, Your Honor. This is the time for truth." As Elon Musk opened the black folder, Judge Chen leaned forward, irritation flashing across his typically composed face. Mr. Musk, I've warned you repeatedly about trying to circumvent proper legal procedure. This court will not, with all due respect, Your Honor, Musk interrupted. Something almost never done to a federal judge. What I'm about to present goes directly to judicial impartiality, which supersedes all other considerations. The billionaire's voice remained calm but carried throughout the now silent courtroom. The plaintiff's attorney jumped to his feet. Objection, this is completely inappropriate and not related to the summary. Judgment motion sustained, Judge Chen said quickly. Mr. Musk, I'm warning you. But Musk had already signaled to his team. Alex Spiro approached the court clerk with a sealed envelope, while another Tesla attorney distributed copies to the plaintiff's table and the court reporter. Your Honor, I've just submitted a formal motion for your recusal from this case, supported by evidence that demonstrates a clear conflict of interest and pattern of bias that violates judicial ethics and federal law. Gasps erupted from the gallery. Two court security officers instinctively stepped forward. Judge Chen's face darkened as he slammed his gavel once, twice, three times. Order! Mr. Musk, you are treading on very dangerous ground. If this is some publicity stunt, it's not a stunt, Musk replied, holding up a document from his folder. 6 months ago, my team began investigating unusual patterns in your rulings against Tesla and other companies I'm associated with. What we found led us to dig deeper. The temperature in the courtroom seemed to drop by 10 degrees. Judge Chen's clerk whispered urgently in his ear. But he waved her away, eyes locked on Musk through entirely legal means. Musk continued, we discovered that Granger Holdings, a private equity fund that owns significant positions in my competitors and has heavily shorted Tesla stock, made a series of payments totaling $17.3 million to Westlake Partners between 2018 and 2023. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal sat up straighter, typing frantically, this would be unremarkable. Musk went on, except that Westlake Partners is managed by your brother-in-law, James Lau, and financial disclosures show that you and your wife are silent investors in that very same firm. The courtroom erupted. Judge Chen's gavel came down hard enough that the head cracked slightly. That's enough. These allegations are outrageous and defamatory. But Musk wasn't finished additionally. Your Honor, we've uncovered communications between your former law clerk, David Shimamoto, and the plaintiff's law firm dating back 2 years before this case was even filed, communications that specifically discuss strategies for, and I quote, bringing Musk down through litigation that would be assigned to Judge Chen. The plaintiff's attorney was now on his feet shouting objections, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos in the gallery. A Fox News reporter was already broadcasting live from the back row, speaking in urgent tones to his camera judge. Chen's face had gone from flushed to ashen. This proceeding is suspended. We'll reconvene after I've reviewed these allegations in chambers. There's more, Your Honor. Musk persisted, his voice cutting through the noise. The courtroom gradually quieted. Everyone straining to hear our investigation revealed that you participated in a previously undisclosed private conference in Aspen last year, a conference sponsored by Clean Tech Alliance, whose founding members include 3 companies directly competing with Tesla. Camera phones were now recording from every angle, despite the court rules against such devices. Court security seemed paralyzed, unsure whether to enforce the no recording policy or focus on the mounting tension between the tech billionaire and the federal judge at this conference. Musk continued holding up photographs. You gave a private talk entitled Reigning in Disruptive Tech Monopolies, where Tesla was specifically mentioned 18 times. You then participated in a closed-door strategy session with plaintiff attorneys who are now appearing before you. In this very case, Judge Chen stood abruptly. This court is in recess, he declared, voice cracking slightly. Counsel for both parties in my chambers. Immediately, everyone else out, as Chen disappeared through the door behind his bench. The courtroom burst into frenzied activity. Reporters rushed for the exits, already calling editors. The plaintiff's legal team huddled in urgent conversation, faces grim in the middle of the storm. Musk remained standing perfectly still. The black folder opened before him. Alex Spiro leaned over, whispering, "The SEC lawyers just walked in. This is about to get much bigger." Musk nodded slightly, released the documents to the DOJ contacts. He murmured all of them outside the courthouse. A crowd had already begun to gather as news of the confrontation spread across social media. Within 20 minutes, Tesla stock had jumped 7%, while shares in Judge Chen's brother-in-law's investment firm plummeted. CNN's chief legal analyst was already on air. If even half of Musk's allegations can be substantiated, this represents one of the most significant judicial scandals in modern American history. Back inside, as Musk prepared to enter the judge's chambers, a court clerk handed him a note. He read it, a slight smile crossing his face. The note from a Department of Justice official contained just 5 words. We've opened a formal investigation 4 hours after Judge Chen had abruptly called for recess. The doors to Courtroom 12B reopened. The gallery, which had partially emptied during the long wait, quickly filled beyond capacity as word spread through the courthouse, now alongside regular observers. Senior officials from the Department of Justice and the Judicial Ethics Committee occupied the front row. The atmosphere had transformed entirely, where before there had been the usual professional detachment of a federal proceeding. Now the air crackled with tension. Reporters clutched notebooks, foregoing digital devices, as court officers had implemented a strict electronics ban following the earlier leaks at precisely 3:30 p.m. The side door opened, but instead of Judge Chen, Chief Judge Susan Ilston, AIO, the Northern District of California, entered, her expression grave. The significance wasn't lost on anyone. A chief judge appearing mid-proceeding signaled extraordinary circumstances. "All rise," called the bailiff, his voice noticeably tenser than usual. As the gallery stood, Elon Musk entered with his legal team. The usual confidence in his stride was there, but tempered with a seriousness that matched the moment he carried the now infamous black folder, plus what appeared to be additional documentation. The plaintiff's legal team entered from the opposite door, their earlier swagger replaced by visible concern. Greg Stevens, who had been smirking at Musk just hours earlier, now avoided eye contact entirely. "Be seated," Chief Judge Ilston directed, taking her place at the bench. "I am temporarily presiding over this matter following Judge Chen's immediate recusal from this case and all matters involving Tesla, SpaceX, or any entity associated with Mr. Musk." A collective murmur swept through the courtroom in light of the extraordinary allegations presented this morning. She continued, "The Judicial Council has initiated an emergency review. Judge Chen has voluntarily stepped aside pending full investigation." The plaintiff's attorney rose halfway. "Your Honor, we strongly object to the proceedings being derailed by unsubstantiated." "Mr. Stevens," Judge Ilston interrupted sharply, "the documentation Mr. Musk provided has been preliminarily reviewed by the Ethics Committee and found sufficiently credible to warrant full investigation. Your objection is noted, but this isn't a matter for debate." Stevens sank back into his seat as camera sketchers captured his deflated posture. Judge Ilston turned toward Musk. "Mr. Musk, while the court acknowledges your right to raise legitimate concerns about judicial impartiality, the manner in which you chose to do so was highly irregular. However, given the nature of what you've uncovered, I'm setting aside procedural concerns for the moment." She held up a document bearing federal seals. "The materials you submitted have been forwarded to the Department of Justice's Public Integrity Section. I've been informed that they've opened a formal investigation, not just into Judge Chen's financial connections, but into what appears to be a coordinated effort involving several parties to manipulate the judicial system." The moment had arrived. Every eye in the courtroom fixed on Musk as he stood straightening his tie. "Thank you, Your Honor," he began. "What we uncovered goes beyond one judge or one case. The evidence we've compiled suggests a deliberate campaign orchestrated by specific financial interests to use the judicial system as a weapon against companies they've shorted or compete with." Musk opened the folder and placed a document on the projector. The court screen displayed a complex web of connections between investment firms, law offices, and judicial staff members. This diagram tracks financial flows and communications we've documented over the past 3 years. A network of short sellers and rival tech companies have funneled over $240 million through various shells and trusts to fund specialized litigation against Tesla and other companies. I lead the display changed to show email communications, bank transfers, and meeting logs, all meticulously organized and annotated. Particularly concerning is the series of Communications Musk continued highlighting a section of the screen. Judge Chen's former law clerk didn't just coincidentally join the plaintiff's firm. He was specifically recruited 2 years before this case was filed, with explicit discussion of using his knowledge of the judge's thinking to craft arguments that would appeal to his known biases. Judge Ilston leaned forward, studying the evidence with increasing concern. Mr. Musk, these allegations extend well beyond judicial ethics violations. You're describing what could amount to conspiracy and racketeering. Precisely, Your Honor, Musk replied, his voice gaining strength. This isn't about one judge or one case. This is about a systemic attempt to weaponize the courts for market manipulation and competitive advantage. The final piece of evidence appeared on screen, a recorded conversation between a hedge fund manager and a legal consultant discussing how they had Chen in our pocket and planning how to use his rulings to trigger a Tesla stock collapse. The courtroom fell completely silent. Even the most seasoned legal reporters appeared stunned by the breadth and detail of the evidence. At the plaintiff's table, 2 attorneys whispered urgently to each other, while a third frantically typed on his phone beneath the table. Judge Ilston removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. In light of this evidence, this court has no choice but to take the extraordinary step of dismissing the current proceedings without prejudice, pending the outcome of criminal investigations. She turned toward the Justice Department representatives. I'm formally requesting that the DOJ expand its investigation to include all parties potentially involved in this alleged conspiracy. The lead DOJ attorney stood, "We're already in motion. Your Honor, search warrants are being executed at multiple locations as we speak at that moment, as if on cue." The courtroom doors opened. FBI agents entered, moving directly to the plaintiff's table. Gregory Stevens announced, the lead agent. "We have a warrant for electronic devices and documents in your possession. Please step aside." Stevens stood visibly shaking. "This is outrageous. You can't possibly." "Actually, we can," replied the agent displaying the warrant, "and similar scenes are currently playing out at your office in the headquarters of Granger Holdings," as the FBI secured evidence and escorted Stevens toward the exit. Judge Ilston made one final pronouncement. "This court will reconvene in 2 weeks to address next steps. Until then, all related proceedings in this district are stayed." The gavel came down with a finality that echoed throughout the silent courtroom as the judge departed. All eyes turned to Musk, who closed his folder, calmly nodded once to the Justice Department officials, and allowed himself a single satisfied exhale outside on the courthouse steps as federal agents escorted the plaintiff's legal team to waiting vehicles. The gathered crowd of Tesla supporters erupted in cheers. Musk emerged into the sunlight, squinting slightly as cameras flashed from every direction. A sea of microphones thrust toward him, reporters shouting questions simultaneously, but Musk simply raised a hand, quieting them with the gravitational pull of his presence. "Today wasn't about winning a case," he stated, his voice carrying across the plaza. "This was about exposing a corruption that threatens not just Tesla, but the integrity of our entire judicial system. When we discovered what was happening, we could have settled privately or made deals instead. We chose to bring everything into the light." He paused, looking directly into the network cameras. "As I've always believed, sunlight is the best disinfectant." The fallout from what the media quickly dubbed the Chen scandal spread through the American legal and financial systems like wildfire. Within 48 hours of Musk's courtroom revelation, the shock waves had reached far beyond one federal judge and one tech company on Wall Street. The immediate impact was seismic. Tesla stock surged 23% in the following trading session, while companies linked to the exposed network of short sellers saw their shares plummet. Granger Holdings, the private equity fund at the center of the scandal, lost 41% of its value before trading was temporarily halted. "This is unprecedented," declared financial analyst Jim Cramer on CNBC, his voice rising with each word. "We're witnessing what might be the biggest attempted market manipulation scheme ever uncovered. The SEC, the DOJ, everybody's involved now, and the dominoes are just beginning to fall." Social media erupted with hashtags like "Our Musk Justice" and "Judge Gate" trending globally. Tesla supporters celebrated online, sharing memes of Musk in superhero poses, facing off against figures in judicial robes. Even traditionally, Musk's skeptical platforms found themselves acknowledging the significance of what he had uncovered on Capitol Hill. The political reaction crossed partisan lines in rare fashion. Senator Elizabeth Warren, No friend of billionaires stood at a podium flanked by Senator Josh Hole, their usual ideological divide bridged by shared outrage. While Mr. Musk and I have had our differences, Warren stated firmly what he has exposed demands immediate congressional attention. This committee will be launching a full investigation into judicial conflicts of interest and the potential manipulation of our courts by financial interests. Holly nodded in agreement. When a billionaire with resources is targeted, this systematically imagine what happens to ordinary Americans facing a potentially compromised judiciary. This strikes at the heart of our justice system. By the third day, the investigation had expanded dramatically. The FBI executed search warrants at 14 locations across 7 states. The offices of 2 prominent law firms specializing in class action litigation against tech companies were sealed off with evidence. Tape 5, hedge fund managers received grand jury subpoenas. Most significantly, 2 additional federal judges were asked to recuse themselves from all cases involving technology companies, pending ethics investigations into similar financial arrangements at the Department of Justice. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced the formation of a special task force. The allegations raised by Mr. Musk, which have been substantiated by initial evidence, suggest a pattern of corruption that may extend beyond a single judge or district. We are committed to following this investigation wherever it leads. Regardless of the power or connections of those involved in Silicon Valley, the tech community's reaction was mixed but trending strongly in Musk's favor. Even longtime rivals offered grudging respect. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos tweeted simply, "Different approaches, same enemies, respect for shining light where it's needed." Elon Musk, 8 days after the courtroom revelation, Musk gave his first detailed interview about the investigation to journalist Kara Swisher. The resulting podcast broke streaming records across platforms. When we first noticed the pattern of rulings, I was skeptical that there could be actual corruption. Musk explained the American judicial system, for all its flaws, has been relatively free of the kind of blatant financial conflicts you see elsewhere in the world. "So what changed your mind?" Swiss pressed data. Musk replied, "We started mapping judicial decisions against financial positions taken by specific funds. The statistical anomalies were too significant to be coincidence. Once we had that pattern, we followed the money, and you personally directed this investigation?" Musk nodded. "Some things you can't delegate. This wasn't just about Tesla. It was about whether powerful interests could effectively purchase judicial outcomes. Once we had concrete evidence, I had a responsibility to expose it as publicly and irrefutably as possible. Critics say you could have handled it through proper channels, judicial complaints, DOJ referrals, rather than the dramatic courtroom confrontation." Swisher noted. Musk's expression hardened slightly. "We tried that route initially. 3 confidential complaints disappeared into administrative black holes. 2 ethics reviews were mysteriously closed without action. It became clear that elements of the very system meant to police these conflicts were potentially compromised." The interview drew over 18 million listeners in its first 24 hours, further cementing public support for Musk's actions. A Gallup poll released the same week showed 78% of Americans approved of how he had handled the situation, an astonishing level of consensus in an otherwise polarized nation. By the 2 mark, as Judge Ilston had scheduled, the parties reconvened in federal court. But the scene could not have been more different from the original hearing. The plaintiff's law firm had withdrawn completely following the arrest of 2 senior partners. The class action against Tesla was in limbo, with legal experts predicting it would ultimately be dismissed with prejudice. More significantly, the Justice Department announced indictments against 17 individuals connected to the scheme, including Judge Chen's brother-in-law, 2 law firm partners, a judicial clerk, and 4 executives from financial firms specializing in short selling. Judge Chen himself had not been indicted but had announced his retirement from the federal bench for health reasons. Inside sources reported he was cooperating with investigators in exchange for potential leniency. Perhaps most consequentially, Chief Justice John Roberts announced the formation of a Supreme Court commission to review judicial ethics rules and financial disclosure requirements for all federal judges. "The integrity of our courts is non-negotiable." His statement read, "This moment calls for a comprehensive reevaluation of how we ensure judicial independence from financial influences for Tesla and Musk personally." The vindication was complete. The class action that had threatened billions in damages was effectively dead. More importantly, what had been revealed as a coordinated campaign against his companies through judicial manipulation had been exposed and dismantled in his final public statement on the matter delivered at a technology conference in Austin. Musk reflected on the broader implications. What we uncovered wasn't just about Tesla or about me. He told the audience it was about whether our institutions can resist capture by financial interests. The fact that this scheme was exposed and is being prosecuted gives me hope, but it also raises questions. How many other judges, how many other companies, how many ordinary citizens have faced a system quietly compromised by hidden influences? He paused, looking out at the silent crowd. The work of cleaning up our institutions has just begun, and unlike rockets or electrics, cars, this isn't something any one person or company can do alone. It requires all of us to demand transparency and hold power accountable. As Musk's words spread across social media and news outlets, the implications continued to ripple through the system. Judicial watchdog groups reported a 400% increase in tips about potential conflicts of interest among federal judges. Congress fast-tracked legislation, strengthening financial disclosure requirements for the judiciary, and in boardrooms across America, corporate leaders began reviewing their own litigation strategies, wondering if they too had been targeted by similar schemes. What had begun as one billionaire's dramatic courtroom confrontation had evolved into something far more significant, a nationwide reckoning with questions of judicial integrity, financial influence, and the very foundations of American justice. Thanks for watching this shocking story about Elon Musk's courtroom revelation. If you found this coverage valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more breaking stories at the intersection of tech business and justice. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on this judicial scandal and what you think the long-term impacts might